I think there should be many more places which are individual, and the sort of city, sort of town idea is always concerned with a conformity.
Everyone has an idea of what they consider rural living to be about, but what's your idea of it? What does it mean to you?
It's the scale of the buildings. Big cities are to do with big buildings which are sort of power statements, either of military or empire or basically sort of merchant wealth, which are always belittling. And, you know, this is where life really happens in the city, because, you know, the country is about a sort of backwards area where people are sort of yokels. And I'd actually much prefer to associate with those people than the sort of city type, the sort of huge numbers of nameless businessmen with their sort of leather lunchboxes. You see sort of all identically dressed going into aeroplanes and things. To me, it seems to be a very normal thing to do, to develop your own place that you live in. And, you know, if you don't want to have the things which are available through shops, then you either have to make them or get somebody to make them, or work with somebody. I mean, the clock is a case in point. Jürgen Tubecker made the big clock there, and the glasses are made by friends. Pottery is made by friends. So rather than objects which are bought through a shop, it's much nicer to have objects which are where you know their origin, who has made them, and the time that happened. The original fire that we built in didn't look very good. It didn't really work very well. We got the stove which is in there, and it was in a very square space, and it looked terrible. And so we had to find a solution to that problem. And there's a brilliant builder in the village, George Burns, who has an absolute passion for stones and really sort of very sympathetic with stone. So I showed him some photographs that I'd taken up on Orkney of Broch construction, where you have, rather than all the stones going in a horizontal layer, where you have some quite large uprights and small sort of chalky stones going in. So that's a piece I really like, because it's like a conversation between George and I over a couple of days.
Do you have more affinity with the homes of a few thousand years ago than you do with modern living?
Yes, I think there's certainly a lot more power and simplicity, which I like, in some of the buildings on Orkney, of sort of Maeshowe and Skara Brae, that there's a response to the material. And also to more primitive societies, but in brackets, primitive societies. Because we talk of Skara Brae, where sort of 5,000 years ago, you're talking about indoor toilets, which was better than the Victorians.
As a furniture maker, could you bear to walk round a furniture superstore?
I see no reason to do that. It doesn't. I mean, furniture itself doesn't really interest me. I mean, certainly it is. Yes, okay. On the one hand, it's mass produced and it's cheaper in the very short term because your MFI thing. It's generally a temporary fill-in, and it's the idea of disposable things. I mean, that doesn't go to an auction room when it's finished with. I mean, that goes to the skip. And so, in the long term, probably people buying furniture over and over again throughout their life, they'll be probably spending a lot more.
Could you shop for a wardrobe?
Wouldn't know where to begin. I've never bought a piece of furniture.
Many people think that when I came to live here I was opting out, but I like to think that I've opted in to life.
Why do you whisper, green grass? Why tell the trees what ain't so? Whispering grass, the trees don't have to know. No, no. Why tell them all your secrets?
You must have one of the best views in the world here. Is that what made you want to live on the west side of Hoy?
Yeah, I suppose I did really. But then, of course, most people will find that where they live, they have a nice view anyway. I'm very lucky here because there's nobody built their house in front of me. Of course, the view is very much something that I've created. Of course, the window here makes the house now. And when you look at the number of windows I've had there before, this one is definitely the very best one. The little window I had before didn't give very much light, and it was a sort of cottage window. Of course, many people say, oh, you've ruined the look of the house by putting in the big windows. But then I live in the house because it's what I want. It's not to suit other people.
Is this house very much about trial and error?
Of course it is. Everything in this house is trial and error. I suppose the one thing that I should have is a notice above the door saying that we reserve the right to amend and alter anything that suits us.
You moved into what was originally a cow byre. How did you go about making it habitable?
I cemented all the walls to fill all the holes, and then I lined the ceiling with wooden fish boxes from the beach. And then sometime later we got some very nice tongue and groove and made it a bit more presentable. We had a rather unfortunate experience when we did the ceiling because the price of the tongue and groove doubled overnight. So instead of a bill of £90, it cost us almost £250. I don't think the Sistine Chapel ceiling cost as much to have done by Michelangelo as what this ceiling did. I still look at it and think, boy, I was really done. The ceiling next door costs nothing because it's simply wooden fish boxes from the beach. And I've kept that because it reminds me of what it was like in here.
You've used the beach, though, as a great source of objects that you've been able to make use of in the house.
Yes, indeed I have. All the plant pots that I have my plants in are old plastic tubs that ice cream and margarine have been in. Plastic milk crates make wonderful little tables, occasional tables that you can set things on. Tins of paint's a wonderful thing too. You usually have to wait about 4 weeks if you say, oh, I could do with a tin of this or that. And about 4 weeks later, a tin of paint will arrive. It may not be the right colour, but you can always adapt it. There's always an inexhaustible supply of brooms and brushes, so we never have to buy things like that.
Friends also give you a lot of items, don't they?
Yes. When I came to live here, I came at the right time because since I came to live here, 9 houses have been restored as holiday homes, and people were bringing out things like carpets and furniture, and if they had no use for it, I aired it. And of course, it works 2 ways, you see, because when I get things that I have no use for, I pass them on to somebody else. I think there was at least 2 hideous cut glass flower vases, which somebody gave me. I gave to somebody. They gave me them back. I gave them to somebody else. I got them back, and eventually I threw them over the cliff because I was sick, fed up with this ridiculous cycle of things being passed backwards and forwards. The chairs that I'm sitting on at the moment were given to me by a neighbour because they had no further use for them because the coverings were becoming very tatty and scruffy. So I acquired them and I simply recovered them.
But you've matched everything up. The bed cover, the
That's right.
curtains, the
Isn't
chair
it?
covers.
Isn't it ghastly? It's what I think they call coordinated. But it's a nice colour because it's a warm colour and it doesn't show the dirt.
Don't you tell it to the breeze, or she will tell the birds and bees, and everyone will know, because you told the blabbering trees. Yes, you told them once before. It's no secret anymore.
The garden outside has been a sort of battle against the elements all my life because I've planted all sorts of wonderful things here and they'll just grow and mature, and then the next day will come a horrendous gale and the wind swirls around here and you see beautiful plants that you have tended so lovingly and carefully torn out of the ground.
Why is it important for Orkney to be your home?
Well, I was born here and I've lived the last 50 years here. I don't want to go anywhere else. Orkney today is a haven away from the crudities of the modern world.
The most important things in life to me are actually out there in the hills.
Why do you enjoy living in the middle of a moor, far from anything else?
I love not feeling too important. It puts me back into the sort of the place I should be, which is a tiny little human being in this huge, huge landscape. And that's the right proportion that I feel man should be to the earth, really. And so it just sort of knocks me on the head again and says the human being isn't so important. This wonderful landscape plays a much bigger part. And so I can walk way up on the hill and you can breathe in the whole landscape and feel part of it again. You can feel the sort of history, man's history going back, way back. So again, one life isn't very important.
Is the nearness of the landscape more important than the nearness of people?
Much more so. In fact, I hate seeing people, really, when if I walk around and I actually bump into somebody. I mean, it's terrible. You run away and hide, you avoid someone. So the nearness of the landscape is because you're facing something when you're here. You're facing something that's fundamentally important to the human being, I think. It's right up to your nose. I just have to nip out the door at any time of day or night, and there it is, these extraordinary sounds. It's almost like a breathing.
When you go out to walk in the hills, do you bring things back?
I do, yes. Because when you look at it out there, it looks as if everything is just nothing there, almost, like all just grass. Whereas if you get down amongst it all, you can find, if you pick out one type of grass and bundle it together, you've got something beautiful, something really lovely.
Could anybody do this?
Yeah, as long as, I think you've just got to flick a switch in your head and just think laterally. And I think if everyone could just switch their own switch in their head and stop thinking about the fact if they need a vase or something like that, if they need to put something to put flowers in, they've got to go to one of the big chain stores and buy a vase. In fact, you don't need to do that. All you need is some sort of receptacle that's this shape. And it can be an empty one if you don't want to put water in it. So I think anyone actually could. They mustn't care too much about what other people think of them. You know, forget that. And we have a wonderful freedom. Our imaginations are extraordinary. And we've got so much stuff left in the world at the moment. You know, we're making things all the time and then throwing it away. So there's so much to find. And we should start to use it. You see, the other lovely thing about it too is that things that aren't just in a shop and new, have had that little taint of nature, that lovely little touch from nature. And she does beautiful things to them that man really wouldn't even think to do. Little tiny, tiny marks and things that would take, I mean, as an artist, I know they're really difficult to do. You didn't even think of doing them. And you know, nature does them.
You like to have your own paintings around you?
I don't mind, but I very rarely get the chance, actually. You know, I mean, I have one or two around the place that I, just fate has it that they haven't found their owners yet, and so I end up living them with them for a while. But it's rather fatal, actually. If they live with me, they usually get changed a bit, and I can't resist sitting and thinking, needs another coat of glaze here or something like that. And I fiddle around with them a bit more. So it's much better, actually, that they get framed up and sold and off and away. Although sometimes I go in people's houses and I think, oh, God, I wish I could have kept that. You know, it's a big painting which I spent 3 months on, and it fills the room. And I never get a chance to keep those. I can't afford to.
You've stripped back the walls of the house to show the texture and then
Yes.
coloured them. Why have you done that?
Well, I think one of the reasons is I've done a lot of work in derelict houses, you know, paintings in derelict houses, and I love them. And when I started stripping off the walls here, I found underneath there were all the other people who'd lived here, and they had, you know, chosen all their colours, which go back years and years, and suddenly on the walls were all these marks that it would take me an age to paint, to try and build up that texture. And so you could just use it, all those little nicks in the walls, and if you scoop paint over the top of them, you can see them, and they're unique and wonderful. So, I use them. It gives you just a vision of life gone by a little bit, and the fact that you're just one in a chain. I'm just another little layer in this wall. I love the way that this in Scotland people will say, not where do you live, they say where do you stay, and this reminds me of where do you stay. The fact I'm just staying here for a while. I'm just another little piece of colour on the wall, and someone else will come along and put another colour on top.
My bender is home, so it's like wherever my bender is my home.
Do you feel as if you belong here? Is there a real affinity that you have with the land, even though you weren't born and brought up to it?
Yeah, I think so. I think everybody's close to the land. If you're in a city, you just don't really get the chance, or you get maybe walking in Glasgow in Queen's Park or Kelvin Grove Park, and that's the land. It's like prettily planted flowers, and it's not. But that's what people see, and people go there. So there must be something already there. People go to these gardens to see it. They think that's the land, or they go out into the so-called countryside to look at farmers' crops, whatever, and people call that a countryside. So everybody's got it. Just think we're living that bit closer. It's like, you can't get much closer than the Bender to the land. Yeah, wasn't born to it, but there is something there. We've all got it. It's nature. It's just been drummed out of us a bit.
Wasn't it a terrifying decision to make?
Yeah, I don't know if I did think about it so much at first when I was initially doing it. It's only once I started thinking, yeah, I do want this. That's when I was thinking, oh, well, it is a big step. It's like all my family's away, they're totally different, or doing a totally different thing to me. I was quite bad about it because I didn't write to them for 3 months. They didn't know where the hell I'd gone. I just disappeared and then turned up on the doorstep 3 months later, and a day later the postcard I'd sent them telling what I was doing arrived.
They live in a house, and you live in a Bender. Is it progress?
Yeah, I think so. You might be able to say regression for progression, but I think it's progress. It's a step forward for me. It's something more for what I want. I get more out of the Bender than I would sitting in a wee concrete cell, because that's all I really see a house as. I just get quite claustrophobic when I'm in a house. It's a wee cell with your own key. So I think you get, if you behave well, that you get extra little goodies like your TV or your video. You get all your nice wee bits if you're a good person. And fair enough, you choose your lock-up hours, but you're always trapped there unless you decide to go out yourself. So this is progression. Doing this, we're not wasting the land. We're staying on a bit for a bit of time and moving on. I think that is progression.
Did you make the Bender?
Yes. Yeah. They're always different when you put them up. It's like this one's been put up slightly smaller than it should be. And it could be a bit taller and a bit wider, a bit longer. But that's a good thing about Benders. It's always different when you put it up. Unless you wanted to measure it and be all architectural about it, which I don't. Just stick the Bender spike in the ground, hammer a hole and start putting my poles in. It just comes out as it comes out. It's the advantage I like of a Bender as opposed to maybe having a caravan or a truck. I can put that where I want, wherever I'm prepared to carry the stuff to. I can put it at the top of that hill if I wanted to put it at the top of that hill, if I really wanted to carry all my stuff up there. But it does weigh a fair bit of weight, and tarpaulins probably a bit short of half a ton in tarpaulins, but it's a few of them, so I could break it up and do it, but can put it where I want. Freedom.
Once you've organised protection against the elements, what's your next priority?
Getting the burner in. That wood burning stove is what I do all my cooking in. That's my heat for here. It's what keeps me warm. And everything else is just more looks. Like the bed, I suppose, is practical, but it's not necessary. Bedding, then like the ground sheet would be down, and the what I actually put on the floor, just bits. Like that's just old rice sacks sewn together. It's just a bit of old velvet got from a skip. That'll go down. Everything else is to make it look nice, although the hangings do double for insulation, like keeping heat in. That also hopefully make it look nice. I think so.
Is that a priority, to make it look nice?
Yeah, it's my home. It's like, I don't think you'd sort of in your house, flat or anybody, would like just having bare plaster walls sort of to stare at, and just floorboards unless you polish them up nice. It's kind of hard to polish the grass up if you don't put a ground sheet down. It also gets quite damp.
This must be much more difficult living though in the winter.
I suppose to some people they would see it as difficult, and your first winter on the road is, because you don't know necessarily what you're doing. You've always got to have a good supply of wood, especially like in the Highlands of Scotland. You never know, you could wake up one morning, it's just blizzard, snow everywhere, and you can't get out, so you need kindling, things to light your burner with. All the time, they've got to be there. You've constantly got to have a stock. Make sure you stay warm. Now, you've just got to be a bit together, remembering things. If you use gas, try keep it inside. It's an old trick, because the gas will freeze up, or your water butt, leaving the lid unscrewed a wee bit so that it doesn't freeze on. You can't get your water will freeze up. It's like that. Rivers can freeze up. Just got to be together.
If your family were in here just now, what do you think they would think of it?
I think it'd probably be better than what they think it is, but it'd still be a sort of that you're living in squalor or whatever. It's just like, how can you survive like that? Because people too take for granted a flick of a switch gives you light, gives you heat, electricity. Turn a knob, your water's there, all that sort of thing. It's all just taken for granted. They don't see how you can survive with that. Because I have people asking me, it's like, what do you do for this, what do you do for that, what do you do for water, how do you survive without a tap? And it's like, well, it's perfectly really nice water running down the hill that's not been treated and had things put into it.
Of the possessions that you have in here, which are your favourites?
Photos, I suppose. That's just a one-off thing with like friends, family and things like that.